Hey everybody! In today's tutorial, I am doing my third exercise with patterned paper. This is part of a series, and I will link you to the other two videos, but this one is going to be on the old herringbone technique. So I'm starting with a card front that I am covering with a double-sided adhesive sheet. That is really important to make this process go faster, a lot like when I showed you the Bargello technique. So I really do recommend using these. I have two today. I'm just going to take you through one because they're very similar, but I have prepared two card fronts. And like the Bargello technique, it's very important to have a strong dark color to sort of anchor your design. So I'm using strips of black cardstock. Now I've cut these to 1/4 inch, all the strips that I'm using today. And what you want to do is just create some angled sections on your card front that you will then add strips to in all of the open areas. So I'm doing a similar pattern here, just a strong diagonal with two diagonals going off of it. You can do whatever you like, but I like this triangle pattern. So what I do is I choose two strips of the same color to form a V inside one of these sections. Then I place a different color next to that, sort of inside of that V. And then a third color, and however many colors you have, that's what you want to do, is line those up in little identical colored V's and then start alternating until you've filled out that section. Now you could, on a single V, you could have two strips of a different color. You would just get a different look. I like the consistency of having the V be the same color. Now, the squared off ends of the strips are what go against the black diagonals, so that makes it a lot easier to line up. When I cut them off with scissors at the end, sometimes they can be at a little bit of an angle, so I like to start with that straight edge first. Now, my strategy here on each of these 4 V's was to start with a different color in each quadrant. So on the first one, I used that sort of medium yellow to be closest to the black diagonals. This time I'm using my darkest orange. And all of these papers are from the same pattern paper pack. I will link to that below. And it makes it nice and consistent that all the patterns are the same. But this technique is also beautiful with a variety of patterns within your pattern paper. So just use whatever you have. This is a fun and easy way to kind of use up your stash and make really interesting backgrounds. Another alternate is to make the shapes different. So instead of these V shapes that I have, you could have squares. So this is basically a square on an angle. So it's the same process. You would still be making a V starting at that 90-degree angle that I've created. But you might show more of that on the card, or maybe not have it be at a diagonal. So if you divided your cardstock into 4 quarters, you could still fill each of those quarters with a horizontal and a vertical with these little V's of cardstock, and then you would have 4 kind of little areas that you could do a tableau in. So if you had 4 different stamp images, each one of those could go in kind of a little window, a herringbone window on your card. So there are lots of possibilities for this. The magic is really in the alternating strips of the cardstock. Now I fill out all the way to the edge, just using, even if it's just using a tiny little edge of the strip, so that there's no white space showing anywhere on my card. So you can see with this one how that looks. Now you could also leave this last section white and you'd have a really dramatic place for your greeting or your image etc. So think about different ways to use this technique to kind of frame up your card, because essentially that's what you're creating is a very geometric frame, either for images or text. I'm going to be using a large sentiment on this one. The colors reminded me of Thanksgiving, and so I am going to use a Thanksgiving sentiment. It's kind of pumpkin-y. It could also be great for Halloween, but I liked essentially just doing it with color since all the pattern on my paper is the same. And you can see how I'm kind of harvesting strips from the excess that's hanging over the edge. I'm just grabbing the colors that I need and putting them into place. So as this one comes to a close, you can see this section is much bigger than the other section, so it takes just a little bit more paper, and so you might have to cut a little bit extra. I do recommend for this, I have a Rototrim, as you know, that's my favorite paper cutter. But for little strips like this, a desktop trimmer, I have this little teeny one that I like to use, is really the best because it'll let you get exactly that 1/4 inch strip, and the Rototrim is designed for larger pieces of paper. If you had the Rototrim and you had a full sheet of this cardstock, it's easy to trim off 1/4 inch strips, but when you just have a little scrap left over, like I do, that's easier on a smaller trimmer. So there you go. That's the finished herringbone. It's so much fun to see this all finished. So I'm just going to trim up the edges. Just align your scissors with the edge of the card front that these are all stuck down to. And this is such a neat process with the double-sided adhesive. You're not cutting through adhesive because it's all on that card front. So that is the finished herringbone pattern. Here is the card that I made with it. Very simple, just a large Thanksgiving sentiment. And then here I've put together the little cottage from the set of dies in the descriptions for a fun retirement card. Head over to my blog for more information, and thanks so much for watching.